Okay, now we're down to the lowermost short stretcher that runs between the end assemblies, and it's a lap or single half-blind dovetail, if you want to call it. It just basically a tail cut in the end of the stretcher, and it goes into a little socket that's traced off of it. Very simple joint, and to lay it out, it's very simple. If you remember, when we laid out our legs, we made two marks down here where this will be located, and we just made them on the inside, and that's a good thing to check to be sure that this joint is on the inside of the leg. If you'll notice, this is our face, the outside, so we've made our stop marks here, so we know that this is the inside of the leg. When we get to that point, good thing to remember. But we'll start with the tail, and if you're there it is. Don't like tails first version. I guess you can try it the other way, but nevertheless, we start out. Here's our scribe line where we laid out our shoulders in the very beginning on the three stretchers. We need to bring that across the face of the stretcher, and this will be our baseline for the dovetail. And you can go ahead and bring it around the edge also, and that'll be the shoulders. Okay, the angle on the tail, there's a lot of debate over dovetail angles. I do not care. Anything you want to do. The only recommendation is just not make it where the inside of the tail is so little it could be weak. But just take your bevel gauge and lay it out. If it doesn't look good to you, just change it and do it again. So there's what I've came up with. Looks fine to me. One recommendation is not to have it stop on the corner. You want to come in just a little bit. It's easier to start your saw over here where it's straight than trying to, if you made your mark down through here, to try to start your saw on this corner is much simpler. So and then clamp it up, and we're going to square across the top here. You don't have to worry about the back side of it. And you can tilt it to where your lines are vertical to help you, because you want to saw straight down as possible, or straight on your line as possible. But if you do happen to run off the line on this, it's not a big problem. We're going to trace the socket for this off of this tail. Same thing on the other side. So you can see we've sewn the sides of the tail, and just come back and make your shoulder cuts. And remove the waste. One thing that you can do on this kind of dovetail is check these for square, and it's a good idea. If your saw cuts taper out a little bit and you trace, of course, off the back, it's going to make your slot a little bit bigger. But check those, make sure they're square, and you're ready to cut the little mortise they go in. Okay, now we're ready to cut the mortise, the other half of this joint in the leg that the tail we just cut goes into. Very simple to lay out. Just in between our marks, our layout marks we made earlier. Get it where your shoulders are just right with the side of the leg. And I also use a square to be sure I am square to the leg. And you can actually use the square to slide it up and down if you need to. Okay, that looks pretty good. And one other thing I didn't mention, I've got my second leg is back here, and I've got the other end laid on it to support it, and this laid on the surface. And just use a sharp pencil and scribe nice and close to that tail. And there's what we have. This is what we'll chisel out. One more thing before you start cutting, I lay the stretcher to determine the depth we need to cut this. Leave it overhanging just a hair right there. So we've scribed our depth we need to go from the thickness of the short stretcher. Bring your two lines down and you're ready to saw. We need to, when we're done sawing, we need to saw just inside these lines, and the pencil line needs to still be there. Because when we trace this, of course the line is on the outside slightly. So same thing on the end. So when we're done and ready to try to fit this, our pencil line should be, we need to saw and chop inside of those. And so just you make your two little, I guess you call shoulder cuts on either side. And be careful, and I've already went just a little bit past the end. It's real easy to oversaw this. And just saw down as far as you can. Just inside those lines. generally I make a third cut right through the middle, just to make it a little bit easier to chop our waste out. And just with your 1-inch chisel or whichever one you happen to pick up, just chop it out. And be very careful of these two edges here. It's easy to, when you split those first chunks out, to break those off. And just continue to start chopping your waste out. Be very careful of this line here. It's very fragile. It's easy to damage it. So we're going to get close to it, and then we'll come back and pare all the way up to it. But for now, we've got to get this waste out of here. And be very careful of all these edges on the top. They really show if you damage one. So just keep them in mind as you're chopping these out. And you can also, when you get down to these corners, you can come back in this direction and get all the way up in the corner. Just sneak right up on that line. You can use a router plane to level up the floor, the bottom of this, if you want to. I generally do it all with the chisel. And just take your time, clean it out. there you go. You should have a nice fit, slightly proud of the surface of the leg. Hold it up.
If you're interested in learning traditional woodworking with hand tools, visit my website at woodandshop.com, where you'll find free video tutorials, buying guides, workshop tours, and reviews. Make sure you subscribe to receive my regular blog posts and YouTube videos, and don't forget to check out my 10 steps for getting started. Enjoy!